When the most dangerous man in the city walks through a clinic door and sees his ex-wife 8 months pregnant, the question isn't whether the child is his, it's whether she'll survive what comes next. If you're ready for a story about secrets, second chances, and a love too fierce to stay buried, then stay with me until the end. And when you do, hit that like button and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. The waiting room smelled like antiseptic and fear. Lena Cross sat with her hands folded over the swell of her belly, her fingers trembling despite her best efforts to stay still. The vinyl chair squeaked beneath her weight every time she shifted, and she hated it, hated the attention it drew, hated the way the other women glanced at her with pity or curiosity or both. She kept her eyes down, focused on the scuffed linoleum floor, counting the cracks in the tiles like she counted everything else these days. Shifts worked. Hours slept. Days survived. 8 months. 8 months since the divorce papers had been signed in silence, both of them sitting across from each other in a lawyer's office that cost more per hour than she made in a week. 8 months since Victor DeLuca had looked at her with those cold, unreadable eyes and told her she was free to go. 8 months since she'd walked out of his world and into this one, a world of double shifts at the diner, a studio apartment with water stains on the ceiling, and nights so quiet she could hear her own heartbeat. She told herself it was better this way. She told herself a lot of things. The baby kicked, a sharp jab just below her ribs, and Lena pressed her palm against the spot, soothing. "I know," she whispered. "I know, sweetheart. Almost done." The clinic was small, private, tucked into a part of the city where people paid in cash and didn't ask questions. It wasn't the kind of place Victor would ever set foot in. That had been the point. When she'd discovered she was pregnant 3 months after the divorce, she'd made sure to disappear completely. New phone number, new address, new doctor. She'd covered her tracks the way he'd once taught her to cover his. The irony wasn't lost on her. "Lena Cross?" She looked up. The nurse stood in the doorway, clipboard in hand, her expression professionally neutral. Lena rose slowly, one hand braced against the chair's armrest, the other cradling her stomach. She followed the nurse down the narrow hallway, past examination rooms with closed doors and muffled voices, and tried not to think about how alone she was. No family, no friends who knew the truth. Just her and the baby. It was safer that way. The examination room was small and sterile, the paper on the table crinkling as she climbed onto it. The nurse took her vitals with efficient silence, blood pressure, temperature, pulse, and made notes on her chart without meeting Lena's eyes. It was the kind of practiced detachment Lena had grown used to. People didn't want to get involved. They didn't want to know. "Dr. Morris will be in shortly," the nurse said, and then she was gone. Lena exhaled slowly and let her head fall back against the wall. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, a steady drone that filled the silence. She closed her eyes and tried to breathe through the exhaustion that had become her constant companion. Her back ached. Her feet were swollen. Her body didn't feel like her own anymore. It belonged to the life growing inside her, a life she hadn't planned but had come to love with a fierceness that terrified her. Because loving something meant it could be taken away. She knew that better than anyone. The door opened, and she opened her eyes, expecting Dr. Morris with his kind smile and gentle hands. But the man who stepped into the room wasn't Dr. Morris. It was Victor. Time stopped. Lena's breath caught in her throat, her heart slamming against her ribs so hard she thought it might break through. He stood in the doorway, filling the space with his presence the way he always had, tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in a dark suit that probably cost more than her rent. His hair was still black as midnight, slicked back in that way that made him look like he'd stepped out of an old film, and his eyes, those sharp, calculating eyes, locked onto hers with an intensity that made her want to run. But she couldn't run. Not anymore. His gaze dropped, slowly, deliberately, to her stomach, and everything shattered. She watched the realization move across his face like a storm rolling in. Shock first, his expression freezing for just a heartbeat. Then something else. Something deeper, darker, more dangerous. His jaw tightened. His hands, which had been loose at his sides, curled into fists. When he looked back up at her, his eyes were burning. Lena. Her name on his lips was a knife. Victor. Her voice came out hoarse, barely more than a whisper. "What are you doing here?" He didn't answer right away. He stepped fully into the room and closed the door behind him with a quiet click that sounded like a lock sliding into place. The space between them felt impossibly small and insurmountably vast all at once. She wanted to shrink back, to disappear into the wall, but she forced herself to stay still, to meet his gaze. She wouldn't give him the satisfaction of seeing her afraid. "I could ask you the same thing," he said quietly. His voice was low, controlled, but there was something underneath it, something raw and barely restrained. "But I think I already know." Lena's hands moved instinctively to her stomach, protective. "You shouldn't be here." "Shouldn't I?" He took a step closer, and she felt the air shift. "You're carrying my child, and you didn't think I had a right to know?" "It's not—" She stopped herself, the lie dying on her tongue. Because what was the point? He wasn't stupid. He'd done the math the second he'd seen her. "We're divorced, Victor. We signed the papers." "You let me go." "I let you go," he repeated, and there was a bitter edge to his words. "I let you walk out that door because I thought it was what you wanted. I thought I was doing the right thing." He laughed, a short, humorless sound. "Turns out I was wrong." "You weren't wrong." Her voice cracked, and she hated it. "I needed to leave. You know why." "Do I?" He was closer now, close enough that she could smell his cologne, cedar and smoke, familiar and foreign all at once. "Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you ran. Like you took something that belonged to both of us and hid it away like I didn't deserve to know." "I was protecting her." The words burst out of her before she could stop them, sharp and desperate. "I was protecting both of us." Silence crashed between them. Victor stared at her, his expression unreadable. Then, slowly, he crouched down so they were at eye level. His gaze never left hers. "Her?" Lena swallowed hard. "A girl. We're having a girl." She watched the words land, watched something in him fracture and rebuild itself in the span of a breath. His hand came up, slowly, carefully, like he was afraid she might bolt, and hovered just above her stomach. He looked at her, a question in his eyes. She should say no. She should push him away, tell him he had no right, that he'd lost that privilege the day he'd signed those papers. But she didn't. She couldn't. She nodded. His palm settled against the curve of her belly, warm and solid, and the baby kicked. Victor went completely still. "She's strong," Lena whispered. "Just like you." He didn't say anything. He just stayed there, crouched in front of her with his hand on her stomach, and his eyes burning with something she didn't have a name for. And for a moment, just one fragile, impossible moment, she let herself remember what it had been like when things were different, when his touch had meant safety instead of danger, when she'd believed love could be enough. Then he spoke, and the moment shattered. "You're coming home." Lena jerked back, and his hand fell away. "No." "Yes." There was no room for argument in his voice. "You're coming home, and we're going to figure this out." "There's nothing to figure out, Victor. I'm not coming back to your world. I'm not raising our daughter in—" "In what?" His voice hardened. "In safety? In a house where she'll want for nothing? Where she'll be protected? In a world where people solve problems with bullets?" Lena's voice rose, sharp and trembling. "Where loyalty means more than love and power is the only currency that matters. I won't do that to her. I won't do that to myself. Not again." Victor stood slowly, and she had to tilt her head back to keep looking at him. He towered over her, all controlled fury and barely leashed power. "You think you're safer here? In this place? In that neighborhood you're living in?" Her blood ran cold. "How do you— You think I didn't know where you were?" He leaned in, his voice dropping to something quiet and dangerous. "You think I let you disappear for 8 months without keeping tabs? I gave you space, Lena. I gave you time, but I never stopped watching." The words hit her like a slap. "You had me followed. I had you protected." He straightened, adjusting his cuffs with sharp, precise movements. "There's a difference. Not to me." "Then you're a fool." The words were brutal, clinical. "Because while you were playing house in your studio apartment, working yourself to exhaustion at that diner, someone else was watching you too." The room tilted. "What are you talking about?" Victor pulled out his phone and swiped through it with quick practice movements. Then he turned the screen toward her. The image was grainy, shot from a distance, but clear enough. It was her walking out of the diner late at night, one hand on her lower back, exhaustion written in every line of her body. "This was taken 4 nights ago," Victor said, "by someone who's been tracking you for the past 6 weeks. Lena's mouth went dry. "Who?" "I don't know yet." He pocketed the phone. "But I will. And when I find them, they'll wish they'd never looked in your direction." She wanted to argue. She wanted to tell him he was paranoid, that he was seeing threats where there were none because that's what men like him did. They created enemies to justify their violence. But she couldn't, because there was something in his eyes that told her he wasn't lying. "Why would anyone be watching me?" she asked, hating how small her voice sounded. "Because you're carrying my child." Victor's expression was stone. "Because there are people in this city who would love nothing more than to use her, use you, to get to me. And now that they know you exist, that protection I've been giving you from a distance isn't going to be enough." Fear coiled in her chest, cold and sharp. She wrapped her arms around her stomach, suddenly feeling exposed in a way that had nothing to do with the thin hospital gown. "I didn't ask for this. I know." For the first time since he'd walked in, his voice softened. "But it's happening anyway, and like it or not, you need me." "I don't need anyone. You're 8 months pregnant, working double shifts, and living alone in a neighborhood where 3 women were assaulted last month." His jaw tightened. "Tell me again how you don't need anyone." She wanted to scream. She wanted to cry. She wanted to rewind time to before she'd ever met him, before she'd fallen in love with a man whose world was built on blood and broken promises. But she couldn't do any of those things. All she could do was sit there, pregnant and terrified and so bone-deep tired she could barely think straight. "I can't go back to that life, Victor. I'm not asking you to." He crouched down again, his eyes level with hers. "I'm asking you to let me protect you, to let me be there when our daughter is born, to give me a chance to do this right." "You don't know how to do this right." "Then I'll learn." There was something almost desperate in his voice, hidden beneath the control. "I'll do whatever it takes, Lena, but I won't lose you again, and I won't lose her, not when I didn't even know I had something to lose." The baby kicked again, hard enough that Lena winced. Victor saw it, his gaze dropping to her stomach with an expression she couldn't read. When he looked back up, there was something new in his eyes, something vulnerable and fierce all at once. "Please." It was the first time she'd ever heard him beg, and God help her, she was tempted. Because he was right about one thing. She was exhausted. She was scared. And despite everything, despite the divorce, despite the violence, despite all the reasons she'd left, there was still a part of her that remembered what it felt like to be loved by Victor DeLuca, to be protected by him, to believe that nothing in the world could touch her as long as he was there. That part of her was dangerous. That part of her could get them both killed. "I need time," she said finally. "You don't have time." Victor stood, pulling out his phone again. "I'm taking you to a secure location. Now." "You can't just—" "I can, and I am." He was already texting, his fingers moving fast. "My car's outside. You'll be safe there." "Victor, this isn't a negotiation, Lena." His eyes met hers, and there was no give in them. "Someone is watching you. Someone who knows you're pregnant, who knows where you live, who knows your routine. I'm not leaving you vulnerable, not for another second." She opened her mouth to argue, but the door burst open before she could speak. Dr. Morris stood in the doorway, his face pale and confused. "Mr. DeLuca, I wasn't aware." "Cancel her appointments for the next month," Victor said without looking at him. "She'll be under private care from now on." Yes, of course." The doctor's gaze flickered to Lena, uncertain. "Ms. Cross, is everything—" "It's fine," Lena heard herself say, even though nothing was fine. "Thank you, Dr. Morris." The doctor nodded and retreated, closing the door behind him. Lena stared at the space where he'd been, feeling the walls close in. This was happening. This was really happening. 8 months of careful distance, of building a life separate from Victor's world, and it was all crumbling in the space of a single conversation. "I need to get my things," she said quietly. "Already handled." Victor extended his hand. "We leave now." She looked at his hand, those long fingers, the calluses she remembered, the gold ring he still wore on his right hand, and felt the weight of the decision pressing down on her. If she took his hand, she was stepping back into his world. If she refused, she was gambling with her daughter's safety. There was no good choice. There was only survival. Lena placed her hand in his, and his fingers closed around hers with a grip that was somehow both gentle and unyielding. He helped her off the examination table with a care that felt at odds with the danger radiating from him. When her feet touched the floor, she swayed slightly, and his other hand came to her waist, steadying her. "I've got you," he murmured. That was what she was afraid of. Brate. The car was exactly what she expected. Sleek, black, windows tinted so dark she couldn't see inside. A driver stood by the rear door, his expression blank and professional. He opened it as they approached, and Victor guided her inside with a hand at her lower back. The interior was all leather and luxury, a world away from the clinic's sterile coldness. Lena sank into the seat, her body grateful for the comfort even as her mind screamed at her to run. Victor slid in beside her, and the door closed with a solid thunk that sounded like a coffin lid. The driver pulled into traffic without a word. "Where are we going?" Lena asked. "Somewhere safe." Victor's attention was on his phone, his expression dark as he scrolled through messages. "Somewhere no one will look for you." "Victor." He looked up and she saw the exhaustion beneath the control, the lines around his eyes, the tension in his jaw. He looked older than he had 8 months ago. Harder. "I have a property outside the city," he said. "Private. Secure. You'll stay there until we figure out who's been watching you and why. And then what? And then we deal with them." His voice was flat, final. "Permanently." Lena's stomach twisted. "I don't want you to. I know what you want." Victor's hand covered hers, warm and solid. "But what you want and what you need are two different things right now, and whether you like it or not, I'm the only one who can keep you both safe." She wanted to argue. She wanted to tell him that safety bought with blood was no safety at all, but the words wouldn't come. Because deep down, beneath all her fear and anger and pride, she knew he was right. She was vulnerable. Her daughter was vulnerable. And in Victor's world, vulnerability was a death sentence. "How did you find me?" she asked instead. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "You used your real name at the clinic. Did you really think I wouldn't have alerts set up?" "I thought you'd moved on." "Moved on." He repeated the words like they were foreign. "From you? From us?" His hand tightened on hers. "There is no moving on, Lena. There's only before you and after you, and the after has been hell." Her throat tightened. "We weren't good together, Victor. You know that." "We were great together." His voice dropped, rough with something that might have been pain. "Until I fucked it up." "It wasn't just you." "Yes, it was." He turned to face her fully, his eyes burning. "I was so focused on building my empire, on proving I was untouchable, that I forgot what mattered. I took you for granted. I pushed you away with both hands and then acted surprised when you left." He paused. "But I'm not that man anymore." "People don't change, Victor." "They do when they have a reason." His gaze dropped to her stomach. "And I just found mine." The baby kicked again, as if responding to his words, and Lena pressed her hand over the spot. Victor watched the movement with an intensity that made her breath catch. "Can I?" he asked quietly. She nodded. His hand joined hers, settling gently over the curve of her belly. They sat like that as the city blurred past the windows, two people who'd once been everything to each other, connected now by the life growing between them. When the baby kicked under his palm, Victor's expression cracked open, just for a second, and Lena saw the man she'd fallen in love with. The man who'd held her through nightmares and made her laugh until she cried. The man who'd promised her the world and meant it. The man who'd also built that world on violence and fear. "I'm scared," she admitted. "I know." His thumb traced small circles over her stomach, soothing. "But I promise you, I swear on everything I have, I will not let anything happen to either of you, whatever it takes, whatever I have to do." That was what scared her most, because Victor DeLuca always kept his promises. The property was an hour outside the city, nestled in the hills where the roads turned to gravel and the houses were separated by acres instead of feet. It was beautiful in a stark, isolated way, all stone and glass and clean lines, surrounded by forest on three sides, and protected by a gate that looked like it could stop a tank. The driver pulled up to the front entrance, and Victor was out before the car stopped moving, coming around to her side and opening the door himself. Lena accepted his help getting out, her body protesting the movement. Everything ached. Everything hurt. "Come on," Victor said gently. "Let's get you inside." The house was massive, too big for two people, let alone one pregnant woman hiding from an unknown threat. But it was also undeniably secure. Cameras covered every angle. The windows were bulletproof. The doors had locks that would make a bank vault jealous. Victor led her through the foyer and up a sweeping staircase to a bedroom that looked like something out of a magazine. The bed was enormous, covered in soft linens that probably cost more than her car. French doors led to a private balcony with views of the forest. Everything was perfect. Everything felt like a cage. "There's clothes in the closet," Victor said, moving through the room and checking things with the practiced efficiency of someone who'd done this before. "All in your size. Bathrooms through there. Kitchen stocked. If you need anything at all, there's a phone by the bed. Speed dial 1 reaches me directly." Lena lowered herself onto the edge of the bed, exhaustion crashing over her in waves. "How long am I staying here?" "As long as it takes." He crouched in front of her again, his hands settling on her knees. "I'm going to find who's been watching you, Lena, and when I do, this will be over." "And us?" The question slipped out before she could stop it. "What happens with us?" Victor's jaw tightened. "That's up to you." "Is it?" "Because it feels like you're making all the decisions." "I'm making the decisions that keep you alive." His voice hardened. "If you want to hate me for that, fine. Hate me. But you'll be alive to do it, and so will our daughter." She should be angry. She should push him away, tell him he had no right to control her life. But she was too tired, too scared, too pregnant to fight. "I need to sleep," she said instead. Victor stood, and for a moment she thought he might argue, but he just nodded, his expression unreadable. "Get some rest. I'll be downstairs if you need me." He was halfway to the door when she spoke. "Victor?" He stopped, turned. "Thank you." The words felt like glass in her throat. "For keeping us safe." Something shifted in his expression, something soft and dangerous all at once. "Always, Lena. No matter what." Then he was gone, and she was alone. Lena sat there on the edge of the too soft bed in the too perfect room and let the tears finally come. They fell hot and fast, tracking down her cheeks and dripping onto her hands. She cried for the life she'd tried to build, for the safety that had been an illusion, for the man she'd loved and left and somehow ended up back with anyway. But most of all, she cried for their daughter, the little girl who would be born into a world where love and violence were two sides of the same coin. And she prayed that somehow, against all odds, they'd find a way to make it work. She woke to darkness and the sound of voices downstairs. Lena blinked, disoriented, her body stiff from sleeping in her clothes. The room was bathed in shadows, the only light coming from the hallway through the crack in the door. She could hear Victor's voice, low and controlled, and another voice she didn't recognize. Carefully, she pushed herself upright and padded to the door, pressing her ear against it. 3 women in the past 2 months, the unfamiliar voice was saying. All pregnant, all connected to families in the organization. Connected how? Victor's voice was ice. Wives, girlfriends, one mistress. A pause. They fit a pattern. Late-term pregnancies, living alone or in vulnerable situations. He watches them for weeks, learns their routines, and then what? Silence. Then what, Marcus? Then they disappear. The other man's voice was grim. 2 are still missing. The third, we found her body yesterday. She'd been dead about a week. Lena's hand flew to her mouth, stifling a gasp. He took the baby, Marcus continued. Clean C-section, professional. The mother bled out. The sound that came from Victor was barely human. I want every resource we have on this, he said, his voice shaking with barely controlled fury. I want to know who he is, where he is, and what he wants. And I want it yesterday. We're working on it, boss, but he's careful. No pattern we can track, no signature we can vote. Find him. Each word was a bullet. Or I'll find someone who can. Yes, sir. Footsteps moved toward the front door, and Lena scrambled back from the doorway, her heart hammering. She made it to the bed just as she heard the front door close and Victor's footsteps on the stairs. He appeared in the doorway, his silhouette dark against the hallway light. You're awake. I heard voices. There was no point in lying. What's happening? Victor was silent for a long moment. Then he stepped into the room and closed the door behind him. In the darkness, she could barely make out his features, just the sharp lines of his face and the weight in his eyes. The truth? He asked. Always. He moved to the window, looking out at the forest beyond. There's a man hunting pregnant women connected to my world. He's taken 3, killed at least 1. His hands curled into fists against the glass. And you fit his profile perfectly. The room spun. That's why you're here, Victor continued, his voice flat and terrible. That's why I'm not letting you out of my sight. Because if he gets to you, if he takes you... He broke off, his shoulders rigid. Lena stood slowly, one hand braced against the mattress for support. You should have told me. Would it have changed anything? He turned to face her. Would you have come willingly if you'd known? I deserve to know the truth. The truth is you're in danger. The truth is our daughter is in danger. Everything else is just details. She wanted to argue, but the fear was already there, cold and solid in her chest. What if he finds us here? He won't. Victor's voice was absolute. This place is off the books. No records, no trail. The only people who know you're here are me and Marcus, and he'd die before he'd talk. People die all the time in your world, Victor. Yes. He crossed the room to her, his movements slow and deliberate. But not you. Never you. He was close enough now that she could see his face clearly, the hard set of his jaw, the dark circles under his eyes, the fear he was trying so hard to hide. She'd seen Victor angry, seen him cold, seen him violent, but she'd never seen him afraid. It was the most terrifying thing she'd ever witnessed. What do we do? She whispered. We wait. His hand came up, cupping her face with a gentleness that made her chest ache. We let him think he's hunting you while I hunt him. And when I find him, his thumb traced her cheekbone. I'll make sure he never hurts anyone again. Victor, I know what you're going to say. His forehead touched hers, their breath mingling in the small space between them. You're going to tell me violence isn't the answer, that there's another way. But there isn't, Lena. Not for men like him. Not in my world. Then maybe we need a different world. Maybe. His lips brushed her temple, soft and devastating. But first, I need to keep you alive in this one. The baby kicked between them, a sharp reminder of what they had to lose. Victor's hand slid from her face to her stomach, and they stood there in the darkness, connected by fear and hope, and the fragile thing growing between them. Stay with me tonight, Lena heard herself say. Please, I don't want to be alone. Victor pulled back just enough to meet her eyes. Are you sure? No, she wasn't sure of anything, but she nodded anyway. He kicked off his shoes and shrugged out of his jacket, leaving him in just his shirt and slacks. Then he helped her back into bed, his movements careful and deliberate. He settled beside her on top of the covers, close but not touching, and she turned onto her side to face him. In the darkness, he looked younger, more vulnerable, more like the man she'd married and less like the monster everyone else saw. I missed you, she admitted. I never stopped missing you. We're terrible at this. Yeah. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. We really are. She reached out, her fingers finding his in the space between them. He laced their hands together, his grip warm and solid, and she felt some of the fear ease. Not disappear. It would never disappear. Not completely. But ease. Tell me about her, Victor said quietly. Our daughter. What's she like? Lena smiled despite everything. She's stubborn. Kicks like crazy, especially at night. And she hates when I eat anything spicy. I swear she does flips until I stop. Sounds like her mother. And her father. She squeezed his hand. She's going to be fierce, Victor. strong and smart and completely impossible to control. Good. His voice was rough with emotion. The world's too dangerous for soft girls. She'll need you to teach her how to be strong. And she'll need you to teach her how to be kind. He brought their joined hands to his lips, pressing a kiss to her knuckles. We'll figure it out, together. You keep saying that. Because I mean it. His eyes met hers in the darkness. I'm not losing you again, Lena. I don't care what it takes. I don't care what I have to do. You're mine, she's mine, and I protect what's mine. The possessiveness should have scared her. Maybe it did. But it also made her feel something she hadn't felt in 8 months. Safe. Tomorrow, she said, her eyes growing heavy. We talk about what happens next. About rules and boundaries, and tomorrow, Victor agreed. Tonight, just sleep. She wanted to argue, but exhaustion was pulling her under like a tide. Her eyes drifted closed, and she felt Victor shift closer, his free hand settling protectively over her stomach. The last thing she heard before sleep claimed her was his voice, quiet and fierce in the darkness. I've got you both. Always. And despite everything, despite the danger, despite the past, despite all the reasons this was a terrible idea, she believed him. Morning came too soon and not soon enough. Lena woke to sunlight streaming through the French doors, and Victor's arms still draped protectively over her stomach. He was asleep beside her, his face relaxed in a way she hadn't seen in years. The hard lines around his mouth had softened, and for just a moment he looked like the man she'd fallen in love with. Before the empire. Before the violence. Before everything went wrong. She watched him breathe, her heart doing something complicated in her chest. The baby kicked, sharp and insistent, and Victor's eyes opened immediately. No grogginess, no confusion, just instant alertness. It was a skill he'd honed over years of living in a world where hesitation meant death. Morning, he said, his voice rough with sleep. Morning. Lena shifted, trying to sit up, and winced as her back protested. How long have you been awake? About 3 hours. He helped her upright with gentle hands. You were sleeping. I didn't want to wake you. 3 hours? She stared at him. Victor, you need to sleep. I'll sleep when you're safe. He swung his legs over the side of the bed and stood, running a hand through his hair. There's breakfast downstairs. Marcus brought groceries this morning. While I was sleeping? He didn't come inside, just left everything at the door. Victor moved to the window, checking the grounds with the practiced eye of someone who'd spent his life watching for threats. Protocol. No one enters the house but me. Lena pushed herself off the bed, her body protesting every movement. 8 months pregnant and everything hurt. Her back, her feet, her hips. It all felt like it belonged to someone else. I need a shower first. Take your time. I'll wait downstairs. He left, closing the door softly behind him, and Lena stood there in the too-perfect bedroom feeling like an actor in someone else's life. This wasn't supposed to happen. She was supposed to be independent, raising her daughter alone, free from Victor's world. Instead, she was right back in it, protected by the same man she'd run from. The shower was exactly what she needed. Hot water, expensive soap, and 20 minutes of silence to think. By the time she emerged, wrapped in a robe that was definitely not hers, she felt almost human. The clothes Victor had mentioned were indeed in the closet, all in her size, all in styles she would have chosen for herself. It was thoughtful and invasive all at once, and she didn't know how to feel about it. She dressed in soft leggings and an oversized sweater, then made her way downstairs. The kitchen was enormous, all marble countertops and top-of-the-line appliances. Victor stood at the stove, cooking eggs with the same focused precision he brought to everything. He'd changed into dark jeans and a black t-shirt that showed off the lean muscle of his arms, and Lena found herself staring longer than she should have. Sit, he said without turning around. Food's almost ready. She lowered herself into a chair at the kitchen island, watching him work. You didn't have to cook. I wanted to. He plated the eggs alongside toast and fresh fruit, then set it in front of her. You need to eat, both of you. The food was perfect, and she hated how much that meant to her. They ate in silence for a few minutes, the only sound the clink of silverware against plates. Lena could feel questions building between them, heavy and unavoidable. Victor broke first. We need to talk about what happens next. I know. She set down her fork. You said we'd talk about rules and boundaries. I did. He leaned back in his chair, his eyes never leaving hers. So talk. What do you need from me? The question caught her off guard. She'd expected him to dictate terms, to tell her how things were going to be. Instead, he was asking, actually asking. I need autonomy, she said carefully. I need to feel like I have some control over my life, over our daughter's life. This can't be you making all the decisions and me just going along with it. Agreed? She blinked. Just like that? Just like that. Victor's expression was serious. I'm not trying to control you, Lena. I'm trying to keep you alive. There's a difference. Is there? Because right now it feels like you've taken over my entire life. Only the parts that were putting you in danger. He leaned forward, his elbows on the counter. But you're right. You deserve a say in how this works. So, tell me what you want. Lena took a breath, organizing her thoughts. I want to be involved in decisions about our daughter. Name, medical care, everything. I want you to actually talk to me instead of just telling me what's going to happen. And I want you to be honest with me about the danger, about what you're doing to fix it, all of it. Done. Victor didn't hesitate. Anything else? I don't want to live in your house. The words came out harder than she intended. When this is over, when it's safe, I need my own space, my own life. Something flickered across his face, too quick to name. You want to stay separated? I want to not make decisions about us while I'm being hunted by a psychopath. Her hands moved to her stomach, protective. Can we agree to that? Focus on keeping her safe first, deal with everything else later? Victor was quiet for a long moment, his jaw working. Then he nodded. Fine. We table the relationship conversation until after she's born, and the threat is handled. But I have conditions too. Of course you do. You stay here until it's safe. No arguments, no trying to leave when you think I'm not paying attention. I wouldn't. You would. His eyes pinned her. You did it before. You'll do it again if you think it's the right move. So I need your word, Lena. You stay put. She wanted to argue, but he was right. If she saw an opening, if she thought she could protect their daughter better on her own, she'd take it. Fine, I stay. And you trust me to handle the threat. You let me do what needs to be done without questioning my methods. Her stomach tightened. Victor, I'm not asking you to condone it. I'm not asking you to like it. But I need you to trust that I know how to deal with men like this. Because I do. His voice dropped, dangerous and dark. And when I find him, it's going to get ugly. Lena closed her eyes. This was the part she couldn't reconcile, the part of Victor that could speak so gently to her one moment and promise violence the next. I can't ask you not to. No, you can't. But I can ask you not to tell me the details. She opened her eyes, meeting his gaze. Do what you have to do. But don't make me complicit. Don't make me watch. Victor studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Okay, I can live with that. And when it's over, she swallowed hard. When it's over, you consider getting out. Getting out. He repeated the words like they were foreign. Of the life, the organization, all of it. She leaned forward, urgent. Our daughter deserves a father who doesn't have to look over his shoulder every second, who doesn't solve problems with violence. She deserves better than what we had. She'll have better. Victor's voice was steel. She'll have everything, but you're asking me to give up everything I've built. Everything I am. I'm asking you to choose her, to choose us. Lena's voice cracked. I'm asking you to be the man you said you wanted to be. The silence that fell between them was heavy with years of hurt and hope and too many broken promises. Victor stood abruptly, walking to the window with his hands shoved in his pockets. His shoulders were tight with tension. I can't make that promise right now, he said finally. Not while you're in danger. Not while I need every resource I have to keep you both safe. But after. He turned, and the look in his eyes was raw. After, we'll talk. Really talk. About what kind of life we want to build, what kind of father I want to be. But I need you to understand something, Lena. I may not be able to give you the white picket fence. I may not be able to erase who I am or what I've done. But I swear to you, on everything I have, I will be there for her. And for you, if you'll let me. It wasn't enough. It should have been enough, but it wasn't. Still, it was more than she'd expected, more than she'd gotten before. Okay, she whispered. Okay. Victor crossed back to her, crouching down so they were eye level. His hands settled on her knees, warm and grounding. I know I don't deserve another chance. I know I fucked up the first time so badly you had to run, but I'm asking anyway. Give me this time, these months before she's born, to prove I can be different. Let me show you I can put you both first. And if you can't? The question hurt to ask. What happens if you can't change? Then you'll have your space, your autonomy, and full custody of our daughter. His voice was steady, final. I'll be in her life as much as you allow, and I won't fight you on it, but I will always, always keep you both safe. That's not negotiable. Lena searched his face, looking for the lie, the manipulation, the control, but all she saw was fierce honesty and something that looked dangerously like love. I'm going to hold you to that. Good. He stood, pulling her gently to her feet. Now finish your breakfast. Marcus is coming by in an hour with an update, and I want you rested. They fell into an uneasy rhythm over the next few hours. Victor worked in the study, his door closed but never locked, while Lena explored the house. It was beautiful in a cold, impersonal way. Expensive furniture, original art on the walls, but nothing that felt lived in, nothing that felt like home. She found herself in what would have been a nursery in another life. The room was empty except for built-in shelving and large windows that overlooked the forest. Sunlight poured in, making the space feel warm despite its emptiness. She stood there with her hands on her stomach, imagining what it could look like. A crib by the window, books on the shelves, toys scattered across the floor. A life. You like this room? Lena turned to find Victor in the doorway, watching her with an expression she couldn't read. It's nice, she admitted. Good light. He moved into the space, looking around with that calculating gaze. We could set it up for when she comes. Victor, I told you, I'm not staying here permanently. I know, but she might come early. You're 8 months along and stress can trigger labor. He gestured to the empty room. Better to be prepared. He had a point, damn him. Fine, but nothing too elaborate, just the essentials. Whatever you want. He pulled out his phone, already typing. I'll have everything delivered tomorrow. Tomorrow? Victor? I'm not taking chances, Lena. If something happens, if she decides to make an appearance before we're ready, I want you to have everything you need right here. The baby kicked, as if agreeing with him, and Lena sighed. Fine, but I pick everything out, colors, furniture, all of it. Deal. He showed her the phone screen already pulled up to a high-end baby store's website. Start shopping. Price isn't a concern. Price is always a concern. Not for my daughter. There was pride in his voice, fierce and unmistakable. She gets the best of everything. Lena took the phone, scrolling through options with a mix of excitement and trepidation. This was real. They were really doing this, preparing for a baby together despite everything that stood between them. It felt surreal and terrifying, and somehow right all at once. They spent the next hour like that, Victor standing close as she picked out a crib, a changing table, soft blankets, and tiny clothes that made her chest ache. He had opinions, strong ones, about safety features and quality, but he let her make the final decisions. It was more collaboration than she'd expected, more partnership than control. It gave her a dangerous kind of hope. The doorbell rang just after noon, and Victor's entire demeanor shifted. His hand went to the gun she hadn't realized he was carrying, his body moving between her and the door in a movement so smooth it was clearly instinct. Stay here, he ordered, his voice brooking no argument. Lena's heart hammered as she watched him move down the stairs with predatory grace. Through the window, she could see a black SUV in the driveway, Marcus, presumably. But Victor didn't relax until he'd checked the cameras, looked through the peephole, and verified the visitor's identity 3 different ways. Only then did he open the door. Marcus was a big man, easily 6'4", with the kind of build that came from years of hard work and harder fights. He had a folder under one arm and tension written in every line of his body. The two men spoke in low voices at the door, and even from upstairs, Lena could feel the gravity of whatever was being discussed. Victor glanced up at her, then nodded to Marcus. They moved into the study together, closing the door behind them. Lena stood at the top of the stairs, torn between respecting Victor's privacy and needing to know what was happening. The danger was real. She'd heard the truth in his voice last night, seen the fear he tried so hard to hide. And if someone was hunting women like her, she deserved to know everything. She made her way quietly down the stairs and positioned herself near the study door. The wood was thick, the house well built, but voices carried if you listened hard enough. Found the connection, Marcus was saying. All three women were pregnant with daughters, and all three fathers were high-ranking members of the organization. What's his endgame? Victor's voice was ice. What does he want? Best guess? He's building leverage. Take the babies, use them as collateral against their fathers. A pause. Or he's got a buyer. The implication made Lena's blood run cold. We know who he is yet? Victor asked. Working on it. But boss, there's something else. Marcus's voice dropped. The third woman, the one we found, she died 6 days ago. But her baby was born alive. Silence. Where's the child now? Victor's voice was barely human. Gone. No trace. We're checking black market adoption channels, but find her. Each word was a bullet. I don't care what it costs. Find that baby and bring her home. We're trying, boss, but this guy, whoever he is, he's careful. No DNA, no witnesses, no trail. He's either a professional or he's got help from someone who knows how we operate. Inside job. Victor's voice was flat. You're saying we have a leak. I'm saying it's possible. The timing's too perfect. The target's too specific. Someone's feeding him information. Lena heard something crash. A glass, maybe, or a fist against wood. I want everyone vetted. Everyone. I don't care how long they've been with us or how much I trust them. Someone is selling information about pregnant women, and when I find them, I know, boss, we're on it. More silence, thick and dangerous. What about Lena? Marcus asked. She's safe here? For now, but we need to move faster. Every day that passes is another day he could find her. Victor's voice roughened. I can't. If something happens to her, to the baby, it won't. We'll find him first. You better, because if he gets within 100 yards of her, there won't be enough of him left to identify. Footsteps moved toward the door, and Lena barely had time to step back before it opened. Marcus emerged first, his expression grim but controlled. He nodded to her, respectful, professional, and headed for the front door. Victor appeared a moment later, and the look on his face made her stomach drop. You heard, he said. It wasn't a question. I heard. She moved closer, her hand finding his. Victor, if there's a leak, I'll handle it. His fingers threaded through hers, tight. That's my problem, not yours. It becomes my problem when it puts our daughter at risk. Lena's voice was steady, despite the fear coursing through her. What aren't you telling me? He was silent for a long moment, clearly weighing what to share. Then he sighed, leading her into the living room and settling her on the couch before taking the seat beside her. The man we're looking for isn't just hunting for sport or money, Victor said quietly. He's methodical, organized. He watches his targets for weeks, learning everything about them. And then he takes them when they're most vulnerable, late in their pregnancy, when they're tired and scared and alone. Like I was. Like you were. His jaw tightened. If I hadn't found you at that clinic, if I'd been even a day later. But you weren't. She squeezed his hand. You found me. I'm here. We're safe. For now. Victor's eyes met hers, dark with something that might have been fear. But Lena, if there's someone inside my organization feeding him information, that changes everything. It means he might know about you, might know you're pregnant, might know about us. Then we find who it is. Lena's voice was stronger than she felt. We find them and we stop them. I will stop them. Victor's hand moved to her face, cupping her cheek. You focus on staying safe and growing our daughter. Let me handle the rest. I'm not helpless, Victor. I know you're not. His thumb traced her cheekbone, achingly gentle. But you're also 8 months pregnant and in danger. Let me protect you, please." The please got her, the same way it had at the clinic. Victor DeLuca didn't beg. He didn't ask. He commanded and expected obedience. But with her, in these small moments, he was someone else entirely. Someone she could almost love again. "Okay," she whispered, "but you keep me informed. No more secrets, no more half-truths. I need to know what's happening." "Deal." He leaned forward, pressing his forehead to hers. "I promise." They sat like that for a while, connected in the quiet of the too big house, the danger circling them like wolves just beyond the light. Lena felt the baby move between them, their daughter, already fighting for space, already making her presence known. She was going to be fierce, just like her father. God help them all. The rest of the day passed in strange domestic normalcy. Victor worked from the study, making calls and issuing orders in that clipped, authoritative voice that reminded Lena exactly who he was. She tried to rest, tried to read, tried to do anything that would take her mind off the fear gnawing at her edges, but it was always there. By evening, she was restless and uncomfortable, her back aching and the baby pressing on her bladder every 5 minutes. She made her way downstairs to find Victor in the kitchen again, this time preparing dinner with the same focused intensity he brought to everything. "You don't have to cook every meal," she said, settling onto a bar stool. "I know, but I want to." He glanced at her, his eyes softening. "How are you feeling?" "Huge. Uncomfortable. Like I might explode at any moment." She shifted, trying to find a position that didn't hurt. "How much longer did the doctor say?" 4 weeks, give or take. Victor set down the knife he'd been using and moved around the counter to her. "Here, let me." Before she could ask what he meant, his hands were on her shoulders, strong and warm, kneading the tension from her muscles. Lena let out an involuntary groan of relief. "God, that feels amazing. You're carrying a lot of tension." His thumbs worked up her spine, finding every knot and coaxing it loose. "You need to relax." Kind of hard to relax when someone's hunting pregnant women. Fair point. He continued working, his touch professional but somehow intimate. "But stress isn't good for the baby. So for the next few minutes, I need you to breathe and let me take care of you." It should have been harder to let go. Should have been impossible to relax with everything hanging over them. But his hands were magic, and she was so tired, and just for a moment she let herself lean into it, into him. "When did you learn to do this?" she asked. "Had a lot of time to think about what I should have done differently." His voice was quiet. "How I should have taken care of you better. So I learned." The words hit harder than they should have. "Victor, I mean it, Lena. I spent 8 months replaying every fight, every moment I put the organization before you, every time I came home late or didn't come home at all, and I realized I was an idiot." His hands stilled on her shoulders. "I had everything, and I was too focused on building an empire to see it." She turned on the stool to face him, and the look in his eyes stole her breath. "I don't want your empire," she said softly. "I never did." "I know, you wanted me." His hand came up, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "Just me. And I couldn't give you that. Can you now?" The question hung between them, heavy with hope and fear and too many what-ifs. "I'm trying," Victor said finally. "Every day I'm trying to be the man who deserves you, who deserves her." His other hand settled on her stomach, reverent. "I don't know if I'll succeed, but I swear to you, I'm going to give it everything I have." Lena felt tears prick her eyes, hot and unwelcome. She'd promised herself she wouldn't cry anymore, wouldn't let him see how much he still affected her, but promises were easier made than kept. "What if it's not enough?" she whispered. "Then I'll try harder." His voice was raw with something that sounded like desperation. "I'll keep trying until I get it right or until you tell me to stop, but I'm not giving up on us, Lena. Not again." The baby kicked, hard enough that Victor felt it. His eyes widened, wonder replacing the intensity for just a moment. "She's strong," he murmured. "She's a fighter." Lena covered his hand with hers. Just like her parents. They stayed like that as the sun set beyond the windows, painting the kitchen in shades of gold and amber. Two broken people trying to figure out how to be whole. Two parents trying to build something better than what they'd had. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't even close to perfect. But it was a start. Dinner was quiet, comfortable in a way that surprised them both. They talked about small things, names they liked, nursery colors, whether their daughter would have Victor's dark eyes or Lena's lighter ones. Normal conversations that felt extraordinary given everything else. After, they moved to the living room and Victor built a fire while Lena curled up on the couch with a blanket. The flames cast dancing shadows across his face as he worked, and she found herself memorizing the moment, storing it away against the darkness that was surely coming. Because it was coming. She could feel it. "Tell me about the house," she said suddenly. "This place. How long have you had it?" Victor settled into the chair across from her, his eyes on the fire. "Bought it 2 years ago. I needed somewhere off the grid, somewhere I could disappear if things went sideways." "Did they? Go sideways?" "A few times." His mouth quirked in something that wasn't quite a smile. "Turns out running a criminal empire makes you a lot of enemies." "Shocking." "I know, right?" He looked at her then, the firelight catching in his eyes. "I used to come here when things got bad. When the pressure was too much or the violence got too close. It was the only place I felt like I could breathe." "And now?" "Now it's where I brought you." His voice dropped. "Where I'll keep you safe until this is over." Lena pulled the blanket tighter around herself. "What happens when it is over? When you catch him?" "Depends." Victor leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. "On what you want, what you need." "I don't know what I need anymore." It was the most honest thing she'd said all day. "I thought I knew. I thought leaving was the answer, but now you're questioning everything. Aren't you?" He was quiet for a long moment, the fire crackling between them. "Every second of every day. But one thing I'm not questioning is this." He gestured between them. "Whatever this is, whatever we're building, it matters. You matter. She matters. Everything else is just noise." The baby chose that moment to kick particularly hard, and Lena gasped, her hand flying to her stomach. Victor was on his feet instantly, crossing to her with concern written across his face. "What's wrong?" "Nothing. She's just..." Another kick, stronger than before. "She's very active tonight." "Can I?" He gestured to her stomach, hesitant in a way that was so unlike him it made her chest ache. "Of course." He knelt beside the couch, his hand settling gently over the swell of her belly. When the baby kicked again, his entire expression transformed, wonder and fear and love all tangled together. "Hey there, little one," he murmured, his voice softer than Lena had ever heard it. "I'm your dad, and I know you can't understand me yet, but I need you to know something. I'm going to protect you, always. No matter what it takes, no matter who I have to fight, you'll always be safe. I promise." Lena felt tears slip down her cheeks, silent and unstoppable. This was the Victor she'd fallen in love with, the one who could be gentle, who could be soft, who could promise the world and mean every word. "She's lucky to have you," Lena whispered. Victor looked up, and the vulnerability in his eyes nearly undid her. "I'm the lucky one. Both of you, you're everything." He stayed there, kneeling beside her with his hand on her stomach, until the baby finally settled. And when he helped Lena upstairs later, when he made sure she was comfortable and safe, when he pressed a kiss to her forehead and whispered goodnight, she let herself hope. Just a little, just enough to be dangerous. The nightmare came just before dawn. Lena was running through endless hallways, her stomach heavy, her breath coming in ragged gasps. Behind her, footsteps echoed, methodical, unhurried, inevitable. She tried to scream, but no sound came out. Tried to find a door, a window, any way out, but the hallways just kept stretching, growing longer with each step she took. Then hands grabbed her from behind, cold and clinical, and she felt the sharp bite of steel against her skin. She woke gasping, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might crack her ribs. The room was dark except for the faint glow of moonlight through the French doors, and for a terrifying moment she didn't know where she was. Then reality crashed back. The safe house, Victor, the danger circling them like sharks. "Lena!" She turned to find Victor in the doorway, silhouetted against the hallway light. He was shirtless, wearing only sleep pants, and there was a gun in his hand held low and ready. He must have heard her distress, must have come running, thinking she was under attack. "Just a nightmare," she managed, her voice shaking. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. He was across the room in 3 strides, setting the gun on the nightstand and sitting on the edge of the bed. His hands found her face, tilting it up so he could see her in the dim light. Breathe, he said quietly. Just breathe. You're safe. I've got you. She tried, pulling in air that felt too thin, too insufficient. Her hands were shaking, her whole body trembling with residual fear. Victor's thumbs traced slow circles on her cheeks, grounding her, pulling her back from the edge. Tell me about it, he said. I was running. Someone was chasing me and I couldn't get away, and then she broke off, pressing a hand to her stomach. The baby was awake too, rolling and kicking like she could sense her mother's distress. God, I can't stop shaking. Come here. Victor shifted, pulling her against his chest and wrapping his arms around her. She went without resistance, burrowing into his warmth and letting his steady heartbeat calm her racing pulse. His hand rubbed slow circles on her back, soothing. It's okay. It was just a dream. Nothing's going to happen to you. You can't promise that. Watch me. His voice was steel wrapped in velvet. I have 20 men watching this property, cameras on every entrance, alarms that would wake the dead. And even if all of that failed, they'd have to go through me to get to you. And baby, I promise you, that's not going to happen. She wanted to believe him. God, she wanted to believe him so badly it hurt. But fear was a living thing in her chest, clawing and desperate. What if it's not enough? She whispered. What if he finds us anyway? Then I'll kill him. Simple. Final. Absolute. And anyone who helped him. I won't lose you, Lena. I won't lose either of you. Not when I just got you back. The possessiveness should have scared her. Instead, it made her feel safe in a way nothing else could, because this was what Victor did best. He protected what was his with a ferocity that bordered on obsession. And right now, she needed that, needed to believe that he could keep the monsters at bay. Stay with me, she said. Please. I don't want to be alone. He didn't argue, just shifted them both until they were lying down, her back pressed against his chest, his arm draped protectively over her stomach. The position was intimate and familiar, echoing 1,000 nights when they'd been married and happy and whole. Sleep, he murmured against her hair. I'll watch over you. She closed her eyes, letting his warmth seep into her bones, and slowly, so slowly, the fear began to recede. The baby settled too, as if she could feel the safety of her father's presence, and wrapped in Victor's arms, surrounded by his strength and his promise, Lena finally drifted back to sleep. When she woke again, sunlight was streaming through the windows and Victor was gone. But there was a note on the pillow beside her, written in his sharp, precise handwriting. Had to handle something. Back by noon. Marcus is outside if you need anything. Stay inside. V. Lena stared at the note, her stomach knotting with anxiety. What did handle something mean in Victor's world? Was he tracking down leads, questioning suspects? Or was he doing something darker, something she didn't want to think about? She pushed herself out of bed, her body protesting every movement. 8 months and counting, and she felt every single day of it. Her back ached, her feet were swollen, and there was a constant pressure low in her pelvis that the doctor had assured her was normal, but felt distinctly wrong. After a long shower and a change into comfortable clothes, she made her way downstairs. The kitchen smelled like fresh coffee, and there was a covered plate on the counter with another note. Eat. You need your strength. V. Despite everything, she smiled. Victor DeLuca, feared crime lord, leaving her breakfast notes like a worried mother hen. It was absurd and touching and completely on brand for the strange dance they were doing. She ate mechanically, her mind churning through possibilities. Where had Victor gone? What was he doing? And more importantly, what would he do when he found the man hunting pregnant women? She already knew the answer to that last question. Victor didn't believe in second chances for people who threatened what was his. He would find the hunter, he would extract whatever information he needed, and then he would eliminate the threat, permanently. And the worst part was, she couldn't even argue with the logic, not when her daughter's life hung in the balance. The sound of a car engine made her tense, but when she checked the window, it was just Marcus pulling up in a black SUV. He climbed out, spoke briefly into his phone, then headed for the front door. Lena met him there, opening it before he could knock. Morning, he said, his expression professionally neutral. Everything okay? Fine, just restless. She stepped back to let him in. Victor said you'd be outside if I needed anything. Yes, ma'am. I'm here until he gets back. Marcus glanced around the house, his trained eye checking for threats she couldn't see. You want me to stay inside or out? Outside's fine. I'm not planning on going anywhere. He nodded and turned to leave, but Lena stopped him with a question she knew she shouldn't ask. Marcus, where is he? Victor, I mean. What's he doing? The big man hesitated, clearly weighing how much to say. He's following up on a lead. Should be back soon. What kind of lead? The kind that might tell us who's been watching you. Marcus's expression hardened. And who's been feeding them information? The leak. Right. Someone inside Victor's organization had been selling out pregnant women to a killer. The thought made her sick. Has he found them? The leak? Getting close. Boss is very motivated when it comes to threats against his family. Marcus's eyes softened slightly. You and the baby, you're everything to him. He'll burn the whole organization down before he lets anything happen to you. The words should have been comforting. Instead, they terrified her. Because she knew Victor well enough to know that Marcus wasn't exaggerating. Victor would burn it all down, and the ashes would bury them all. Marcus left, taking up position on the front porch with his phone and his weapon, and Lena was alone again. She tried to occupy herself, reading, napping, even attempting to watch television, but nothing could quiet the anxiety humming under her skin. By the time noon rolled around with no sign of Victor, she was pacing the living room like a caged animal. At 12:30, her phone buzzed with a text. Running late, don't worry, everything's fine. V. Everything's fine. 2 words that meant absolutely nothing in Victor's world. Everything could be fine right up until it exploded in your face. She texted back, Where are you? The response came immediately. Handling business. I'll explain when I get home. Stay put. Stay put. Like she was a dog waiting for her master to return. The flash of anger was surprising and welcome, cutting through the fear. She fired off another text. You promised no more secrets. What's going on? 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Then, found the leak, dealing with it. Be home soon. Found the leak, dealing with it. Lena's hand started shaking again, but this time it wasn't from fear. It was from the terrible knowledge of what dealing with it meant when Victor said it. She wanted to text back, wanted to demand details, wanted to tell him not to do whatever he was about to do. But what was the point? He'd made his promise clear. He would handle the threats his way, and she'd agreed to let him. The hours crawled by with agonizing slowness. 1 o'clock became 2, became 3, and still no Victor. Marcus remained on the porch, a silent sentinel, and Lena wore a path in the carpet with her pacing. At 3:30, she heard the sound of an engine, different from Marcus's SUV, lower and more powerful. She rushed to the window in time to see Victor's car pull into the driveway. He climbed out, and even from a distance she could see the tension in his shoulders, the darkness in his expression. Her heart started hammering as she watched him exchange words with Marcus, then head for the house. She met him at the door, and the look on his face stopped her cold. What happened? She demanded. Victor closed the door behind him and locked it with deliberate precision. When he turned to face her, his eyes were hard as stone. We need to talk. The words sent ice through her veins. Victor, what did you do? What I had to. He moved past her into the living room, pouring himself a drink from the bar with hands that were perfectly steady. He downed it in 1 swallow, then poured another. I found the leak. And I handled it. He turned, leaning against the bar with the glass cradled in his hands. It was Tommy Rizzo, one of my lieutenants. He'd been passing information to an outside party for the past 6 months. Lena's stomach dropped. Why? Money, debt, the usual reasons men betray their families. Victor's voice was flat, emotionless. He didn't know what the information was being used for. Claimed he thought he was just helping with some surveillance, nothing serious. But ignorance isn't an excuse, not when it gets people killed. What did you do to him? She wasn't sure she wanted the answer. Victor met her gaze, unflinching. What do you think I did? The confirmation hit her like a physical blow. She sank onto the couch, one hand pressed to her stomach. You killed him. I eliminated a threat to my family. His voice was hard. He knew about you, Lena. He knew you were pregnant, knew roughly where you were living, and he sold that information for $10,000. So yes, I killed him, and I'd do it again without hesitation. She wanted to be horrified, wanted to feel disgust or fear or righteous anger, but all she felt was a terrible bone-deep weariness. This was Victor's world. This was the reality she'd signed up for when she'd gotten back in his car. "Did you at least find out who he was selling to?" she asked quietly. "He gave us a name before he died. Michael Carson, former military, dishonorably discharged for assault. He's been working as a freelance kidnapper for the past 5 years, specializing in high-value targets." Victor set down his glass with controlled precision. "And he's been hunting pregnant women connected to my organization because someone hired him to." Lena's blood ran cold. "Hired him? This isn't just some psychopath working alone?" "No. Someone wants those babies, someone with resources and connections and a very specific shopping list." Victor's jaw tightened. "We're working on figuring out who, but in the meantime, Carson's our immediate problem." "Do you know where he is?" "Not yet, but I will." He crossed to her, kneeling in front of the couch so they were eye level. "Lena, I need you to understand something. This isn't going to be over quickly. Carson's careful, and whoever hired him has been covering their tracks. But I will find them, both of them, and when I do, I know." She cut him off, not wanting to hear the promise of violence. "I know what you'll do. And you're okay with it?" His eyes searched hers, looking for judgment, for condemnation. Was she okay with it? Lena didn't know anymore. A month ago, the answer would have been an unequivocal no. But that was before she'd understood the true scope of the danger. Before she'd learned that someone was hunting women like her, stealing their babies, selling them to the highest bidder. "I'm not okay with any of this," she said finally. "But I understand why you did it, and I won't ask you to apologize for protecting us." Something in Victor's expression softened. He reached up, cupping her face with a gentleness that seemed at odds with what he'd just confessed to doing. "You're too good for me. You know that, right?" "I'm really not." She leaned into his touch despite herself. "If I was good, I would have stayed away, would have raised our daughter far from your world. But I'm here. So what does that make me?" "Mine." The word was rough, possessive. "It makes you mine." He leaned forward, and for a moment she thought he might kiss her. But instead he pressed his forehead to hers, breathing her in like she was oxygen and he was drowning. "I'm sorry," he whispered, "for all of it, for being the kind of man who has to kill to keep you safe, for dragging you back into this world, for not being better." "You're here." She wrapped her fingers around his wrists, holding him to her. "That's all she needs. All I need. Just you, being here." They stayed like that until the baby kicked between them, a sharp reminder of what was at stake. Victor pulled back, his hand immediately going to her stomach. "She's restless today," he observed. "She's been active since this morning. I think she can tell I'm stressed." Lena shifted, trying to find a comfortable position. "Everything makes her kick lately. Loud noises, spicy food, even just walking up the stairs." "How much longer did the doctor say?" 3.5 weeks. But she said first babies often come late, so..." Lena gasped as a sharp pain lanced through her lower back. "Ow!" Victor was on his feet instantly. "What's wrong?" "Nothing, just..." Another pain, this one wrapping around to her abdomen. "Just Braxton Hicks. The doctor said they'd get more frequent as I got closer." "You're sure?" He looked ready to call an ambulance. "I'm sure. They're irregular and they don't last long. It's normal." She breathed through another contraction, counting the seconds until it passed. "See? Gone." But Victor didn't look convinced. He stayed close, watching her with the intensity of a man who'd just killed someone and wasn't ready to lose anyone else today. The contrast was jarring, this gentle concern coming from the same hands that had ended a life mere hours ago. "I think you should call the doctor anyway," he said, "just to be safe." "Victor, I'm fine. Humor me." His voice was firm. "Please." She sighed, but reached for her phone. The call was brief. The doctor's reassurance is exactly what Lena had expected. Yes, Braxton Hicks were normal. Yes, they'd get stronger. No, she didn't need to come in unless they became regular or her water broke. Standard late pregnancy information that did nothing to ease the tension in Victor's shoulders. She said, "I'm fine," Lena reported after hanging up. "It's just my body preparing." "I don't like it." Victor ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. "I don't like that you're in pain and there's nothing I can do about it. You can sit with me." She patted the couch beside her. "That's enough." He settled next to her, close but not touching, and they fell into an uneasy silence. Outside, the sun was beginning to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. It should have been beautiful. Instead, it just felt like time running out. "Tell me about him," Lena said suddenly. "Carson? What kind of man are we dealing with?" Victor hesitated, clearly weighing how much to share. Then he sighed. "Military background means he's disciplined, methodical. The dishonorable discharge was for assault on a civilian, a woman, pregnant, who he claimed owed him money. He nearly beat her to death. Did 2 years for it." Lena felt sick. And now he's targeting pregnant women professionally. "Looks that way." "He's got a type, and you fit it perfectly." Victor's hand found hers squeezing tight. "But he's not getting anywhere near you. I'll make sure of that." "How many men do you have watching the house?" 24 as of an hour ago. Doubled the detail after we confirmed Carson was active. His jaw tightened. "And I've got people scouring every database, every contact, every possible hiding place. We'll find him." "And the person who hired him?" "That's harder. Whoever it is, they're well-connected and careful. But everyone makes mistakes eventually. We just have to wait for theirs." Waiting. That seemed to be all they did anymore. Wait for the threat to reveal itself. Wait for the baby to come. Wait for some kind of resolution that felt impossible. Another contraction hit, stronger than the last, and Lena gripped Victor's hand hard enough to hurt. He didn't flinch, just moved closer and let her use him as an anchor until it passed. That one was worse, he observed, still irregular. But even as she said it, she felt another coming. "Victor, I'm calling the doctor back." He was already reaching for his phone. "No, wait." The contraction peaked, stealing her breath, and when it passed, she was left trembling. "Okay, maybe call her." This time the doctor's tone was more serious. She asked questions about timing, intensity, whether Lena's water had broken. When she hung up, Victor's expression was grim. "She wants you to come in, just as a precaution." "It's probably nothing." But even as Lena said it, another contraction rolled through her, and this time she couldn't hide the pain. Victor was on his feet, already texting Marcus. "We're going to the hospital, now." "Victor, I don't think... I'm not taking chances." He helped her stand, his arm supporting her weight. "If something's wrong, if she's coming early, I want you somewhere with doctors and equipment, not out here in the middle of nowhere." He had a point. And as another contraction hit, definitely stronger, definitely closer together, Lena found she didn't have the energy to argue. The drive to the hospital was tense and silent. Marcus drove while Victor sat in the back with Lena, holding her hand through each contraction and watching her with eyes that held barely controlled panic. By the time they reached the emergency entrance, the contractions were coming every 7 minutes. "This can't be labor," Lena insisted as Victor helped her into a wheelchair that seemed to appear out of nowhere. "It's too early. She's not due for another 3 weeks. "Babies don't read calendars, sweetheart." A nurse materialized, taking control of the wheelchair with practiced efficiency. "Let's get you checked out and see what's happening." The next hour was a blur of examinations, monitors, and medical jargon Lena only half understood. Victor stayed by her side through all of it, his presence both comforting and overwhelming. When the doctor finally came in, a different one than her regular OB, but competent-looking, Lena braced herself for bad news. "Well," the doctor said, reviewing the chart, "you're definitely in early labor. You're 3 centimeters dilated, and your contractions are regular. This baby's coming." Lena's heart stopped. "But it's too early." 36 weeks and 5 days is considered early term. Not ideal, but not dangerous. The doctor smiled reassuringly. "Your baby is a good size. All her vitals look strong. I don't see any reason to try to stop the labor." "So she's coming. Today." Victor's voice was strained. "Or tomorrow, depending on how fast things progress." First babies can take their time. The doctor looked between them. Do you have a birth plan? Someone we should call? Just us? Victor said quickly. It's just us. The doctor nodded and launched into explanations about what to expect, how labor would progress, pain management options. Lena heard maybe half of it, her mind spinning with the reality that she was about to have a baby. Today. Or tomorrow. But soon. Too soon. She wasn't ready. She didn't have everything she needed. She hadn't finished preparing. And Victor had just killed a man hours ago, and now he was about to become a father. The cognitive dissonance was overwhelming. Lena. His voice cut through her spiral. Breathe, you're okay, we're okay. We're having a baby. The words came out strangled. Yeah. A smile ghosted across his face, fragile and real. We are. Another contraction hit, stronger than all the others, and Lena gripped his hand hard enough to hurt. He didn't flinch, just breathed with her and counted her through it the way the nurse had shown him. When it passed, she looked up at him. This man who was so many contradictory things all at once. Killer and protector. Monster and father. The worst decision she'd ever made, and somehow, impossibly, exactly what she needed. I'm scared, she admitted. Me too. His thumb traced circles on the back of her hand. But we'll figure it out. Together. You keep saying that. Because I mean it. He leaned down, pressing a kiss to her forehead. Whatever happens, whatever comes next, we face it together. You, me, and her. The baby chose that moment to kick, hard enough that both of them felt it. And despite everything, the danger, the fear, the impossible situation they were in, Lena laughed. I think she agrees. Labor, Lena discovered, was nothing like the movies made it out to be. There was no dramatic rush, no screaming chaos, no immediate baby. Instead, there were hours of waiting punctuated by waves of pain that built and crested and receded like a terrible tide. The hospital room became her entire world, sterile white walls, beeping monitors, and Victor's steady presence beside her. He never left. Not when the nurses came to check her progress. Not when the contractions got so bad she cursed him and his entire bloodline. Not even when she told him she needed space. He just stayed, holding her hand or rubbing her back or feeding her ice chips, his face tight with a kind of helpless concern she'd never seen on him before. You're doing great, he murmured during a particularly brutal contraction, his hand smoothing her sweat-dampened hair back from her face. Don't patronize me, she gasped out. This is... The pain peaked, stealing her words, and she gripped his hand so hard she was sure she'd break bones. Victor didn't flinch. He just breathed with her, counted her through it, and when it passed, he was still there. I hate you, she panted. I know. This is your fault. Absolutely. There was the ghost of a smile on his lips. Want to curse me some more? I can take it. Despite everything, she almost laughed. Almost. Then another contraction hit, and all humor evaporated in a white-hot flash of agony. The hours blurred together. Day became night, became something timeless and endless. Lena lost track of how many times the doctor came to check her, how many contractions she'd survived, how many times she'd sworn she couldn't do this anymore. Victor kept count for her, marking progress in centimeters and minutes and small victories she was too exhausted to appreciate. Somewhere around midnight, things shifted. The contractions that had been manageable became overwhelming. The pain that had been bearable became all-consuming. And the calm, controlled breathing she'd practiced went straight out the window. I can't, she gasped, tears streaming down her face. Victor, I can't do this. Yes, you can. His voice was absolute, unyielding. You're the strongest person I know, Lena. You can do anything. I want the epidural. I want... Too late for that, I'm afraid. The doctor appeared, gloved and ready, her expression professionally calm. You're fully dilated. This baby's ready to meet you. Terror and relief crashed through Lena in equal measure. This was it. After 9 months of waiting, after all the fear and preparation and impossible decisions, she was about to meet her daughter. I need you to push with the next contraction, the doctor instructed, positioning herself at the foot of the bed. Nice and steady, Victor, you want to help her? He moved without hesitation, getting behind Lena and letting her lean back against his chest. His arms came around her, strong and solid, and she felt some of the fear ease just from having him there. I've got you, he murmured against her ear. We've got this. The next contraction built like a wave, and when the doctor told her to push, Lena bore down with everything she had. The pain was unlike anything she'd ever experienced, worse than the contractions, worse than anything she could have imagined. It felt like being torn apart from the inside out. Good, the doctor encouraged. That's good, Lena. Rest now. Another one's coming. And it was. They came faster now, relentless and brutal, and with each one, Lena pushed until she thought she might actually break. Victor held her through all of it, his voice steady in her ear, counting her through each push, reminding her to breathe. I can see the head, the doctor announced. One more big push, and we'll have shoulders. Lena didn't think she had anything left to give. Every muscle in her body was screaming, every nerve on fire. But then Victor's hand found hers, threading their fingers together, and she heard him whisper something that sounded like a prayer. The next contraction came, and Lena pushed with every ounce of strength she had left. She felt something shift, felt pressure and pain, and then suddenly, impossibly, release. A baby's cry split the air. It's a girl, the doctor said, but Lena already knew. She'd known for months. Still, hearing it made it real in a way nothing else had. Let me see her, Lena gasped. Please, let me. They placed the baby on her chest, still wet and screaming and absolutely perfect. Lena's hands came up automatically, cradling the tiny body against her, and the world narrowed to just this. Her daughter, real and alive and here. She was beautiful. Dark hair plastered to her head, face scrunched up in indignant fury at being born, tiny fists waving in the air. She had Victor's nose and what might be Lena's eyes, though it was hard to tell through the crying. She was also smaller than Lena had expected, fragile in a way that made her heart clench with fierce protectiveness. Hi, sweetheart, Lena whispered, tears streaming down her face. Hi, baby girl. I'm your mama. I've got you. The baby's cries quieted at the sound of her voice, her eyes trying to focus on Lena's face, and in that moment, everything else fell away. The danger, the fear, the impossible situation they were in, none of it mattered. Nothing mattered except this tiny person and the overwhelming love that crashed through Lena like a tidal wave. She looked up at Victor and found him staring at their daughter with an expression she'd never seen before, wonder and terror, and something so raw it made her chest ache. His hand came up, trembling slightly, and traced a gentle finger down the baby's cheek. She's perfect, he whispered, his voice rough with emotion. Lena, she's... He broke off, and Lena saw tears tracking down his face. Victor DeLuca, the man who'd built an empire on violence and fear, was crying over his newborn daughter. You want to hold her? Lena asked softly. He looked terrified. I don't know how. Neither do I. She smiled through her own tears. We'll figure it out together. The nurses took the baby then, needing to clean her and check her vitals, and Lena felt the loss like a physical ache. But Victor's arms stayed around her, solid and grounding, as they watched their daughter being weighed and measured and pronounced healthy, despite being a few weeks early. 6 pounds, 4 ounces, the nurse announced. 18 inches long, good strong lungs on this one. As if to prove the point, the baby let out another wail of protest at being poked and prodded. Lena laughed, exhausted and delirious and happier than she'd been in months. That's our girl, Victor murmured, already making her opinions known. They brought her back a few minutes later, swaddled in a hospital blanket and wearing a tiny pink hat. This time, when they offered her to Victor, he didn't hesitate. He took her with surprising confidence, cradling her against his chest like she was made of glass. Lena watched him hold their daughter, this contradiction of a man, and felt something shift permanently in her chest. This was real. They were parents now. Whatever happened next, whatever they decided about their relationship, this tiny person tied them together forever. We need a name, Victor said quietly, his eyes never leaving the baby's face. We can't keep calling her the baby. They'd discussed names before, thrown ideas back and forth during quiet moments at the safe house. But nothing had felt quite right. Now, looking at her daughter's scrunched-up face, Lena knew exactly what to call her. Sophia, she said, It means wisdom. I want her to be smart, to make better choices than we did. Victor looked up, meeting her eyes. Sophia. He tested the name, then looked back down at their daughter. Sophia De Luca. I like it. Sophia Cross De Luca, Lena corrected gently. She's both of ours. She should carry both our names. Something softened in Victor's expression. Sophia Cross De Luca, he agreed. Perfect. He bent his head, pressing a kiss to Sophia's forehead so gentle it made Lena's heart hurt. Welcome to the world, baby girl. Your mama and I have been waiting for you. A nurse bustled in then, efficiently checking Lena's vitals and explaining what would happen next. They'd stay in the delivery room for a bit, then move to a recovery room where Lena could rest. Victor could stay, the nurse assured them, though he'd need to step out during certain procedures. I'm not leaving, Victor said, his voice brooking no argument. Not for a second. The nurse smiled, clearly used to protective fathers. That's fine, Mr. De Luca. We'll work around you. Once she was gone, Victor carefully handed Sophia back to Lena and settled into the chair beside the bed. He looked exhausted, his shirt rumpled and his hair disheveled, but he couldn't seem to stop staring at their daughter. I can't believe she's here, Lena whispered, cradling Sophia close. I can't believe she's real. I know. Victor's hand found hers, squeezing gently. How are you feeling? Tired, sore, amazing. She glanced at him. Terrified. Me too. He leaned forward, pressing a kiss to her temple. But we'll figure it out, together. You keep saying that, because I keep meaning it. His thumb traced circles on the back of her hand. Thank you. For what? For her. For giving me a chance to be a father. For... He broke off, his voice rough. For everything. Lena wanted to respond, but Sophia chose that moment to start fussing. The nurse had mentioned she'd want to eat soon, and apparently soon was now. With the nurse's help, because nothing about this came naturally despite what everyone claimed, Lena managed to get Sophia latched and feeding. It was awkward and uncomfortable, and the most natural thing in the world all at once. Victor watched the whole process with undisguised fascination, and Lena found she didn't mind. This was their life now. No secrets, no barriers, just the three of them figuring it out as they went. Sophia ate like she'd been born starving, her tiny hands kneading against Lena's breast, her eyes drifting closed in contentment. When she finally fell asleep, milk-drunk and peaceful, Lena felt tears prick her eyes again. I love her so much already, she whispered. Is that normal? To love someone this much when you just met them? I don't know what's normal. Victor's voice was soft. But I feel it too, like she's always been here, like we were just waiting for her to show up. They sat in comfortable silence as Sophia slept, both of them too wired to rest despite their exhaustion. Eventually, they were moved to a recovery room, larger, quieter, with a small couch where Victor could sleep if he wanted. He didn't sleep. He just watched, his attention split between Lena and Sophia, always alert for threats that couldn't reach them here. You need to rest, Lena told him around 3 a.m, when Sophia was sleeping in the bassinet beside the bed, and Lena should have been sleeping too. I will. Later. His eyes never left Sophia. I just want to make sure she's okay. She's fine, Victor. The nurses have been checking every hour. I know, but I need to see for myself. He glanced at Lena, and she saw the raw vulnerability in his expression. I keep thinking something's going to go wrong, that this is too good to last. Nothing's going to go wrong. But even as she said it, Lena felt the old fear creeping back. Because Victor was right. They weren't safe yet. Carson was still out there. Whoever hired him was still a threat. And bringing Sophia into this world had just made the stakes impossibly higher. As if reading her thoughts, Victor's expression hardened. I'm doubling security. Marcus is already screening every nurse, every doctor, everyone who comes near this room. Victor, I'm not paranoid, Lena. I'm careful. And with her here, he looked at Sophia, his jaw tight. I'm not taking any chances. She wanted to argue that he was being excessive, that they were safe in a hospital surrounded by people. But she couldn't, because deep down, she was scared too. Scared that the danger they'd been running from would find them anyway, scared that Sophia would pay the price for their choices. "What do we do?" she asked quietly. "After we leave here, where do we go?" "Back to the safe house for now. At least until I find Carson and whoever hired him." Victor's voice was steel. "Once the threat's eliminated, we'll figure out something more permanent." "And us?" The question slipped out before she could stop it. "What happens with us?" Victor was silent for a long moment, his eyes on their sleeping daughter. When he spoke, his voice was careful, measured. "What do you want to happen?" "I don't know." It was the most honest answer she could give. A week ago, I would have said I wanted space, my own life, but now, she looked at Sophia, then back at him. Now I don't know if I want her growing up with parents who live separately. I don't know what the right answer is. There might not be a right answer. Victor stood, moving to the bassinet and looking down at Sophia with an expression that made Lena's heart ache. Maybe there's just what we can live with. And what can you live with? He turned to face her, and the intensity in his eyes took her breath away. I can live with anything except losing you again, both of you. So whatever arrangement you need, whatever boundaries you want, I'll accept them. As long as I get to be part of her life, part of your life. Even if I can't give you what you want, Lena's voice cracked. Even if I can't be your wife again? Even then. He crossed back to her, sitting on the edge of the bed and taking her hand. I'm not going to pressure you, Lena. I'm not going to demand things you can't give. But I'm going to be here. Every day, every night, whatever you need. I'm going to prove I can be the man you deserve. The father she deserves. What if you can't get out? What if the organization won't let you go? Victor's expression darkened. Then I'll make them let me go. One way or another. The promise hung in the air between them, heavy with implications she didn't want to examine too closely, because making the organization let him go would require violence, would require Victor to do terrible things to terrible people, and she'd already agreed not to ask about the details. Sophia stirred in her bassinet, making small, snuffling sounds, and they both turned to watch her. She settled again quickly, her tiny face peaceful in sleep, and Lena felt that fierce protectiveness surge through her again. I want her to have a normal life, she said quietly. School and friends and birthday parties. I want her to grow up feeling safe, not looking over her shoulder for threats. She will. Victor's voice was absolute. I swear to you, she'll have everything we didn't, everything we couldn't give each other. How can you promise that when you don't know if you can even leave? Because I'll find a way. He squeezed her hand. I've built an empire, Lena. I can tear it down if I have to. For her, I'll do anything. She wanted to believe him, wanted to trust that love and good intentions were enough to change the trajectory they were on. But she'd lived in Victor's world long enough to know that getting out wasn't as simple as walking away. The organization didn't let people leave. Not when they knew too much. Not when they'd been as deep as Victor had. But looking at their daughter, at this tiny, perfect person who deserved so much better than the life they'd led, Lena let herself hope anyway. Morning came with a shift change and the arrival of the pediatrician to check Sophia. Victor stood guard the entire time, his eyes tracking every movement the doctor made, every instrument they used. The pediatrician, to his credit, didn't seem fazed by the intimidating presence hovering over him. She's perfect, he announced after a thorough examination. Good color, good reflexes, healthy heart and lungs. Being a few weeks early doesn't seem to have affected her at all. Relief crashed through Lena so powerfully she nearly cried. So we can take her home? When we're ready? Barring any complications, you should be able to leave tomorrow afternoon. We just want to monitor both of you for 24 hours to make sure everything's progressing normally. Tomorrow. One more day in this safe, sterile environment, and then they'd be out in the world with a newborn and a killer still hunting them. The thought must have shown on her face because Victor's hand found hers immediately, grounding her. It's going to be okay, he murmured once the doctor left. I've got everything arranged. The safe house is ready. Security's been tripled. She'll be protected. I know, but knowing didn't stop the fear. Victor, what if... Her phone buzzed on the bedside table, cutting her off. Victor reached for it automatically, his expression darkening as he read the screen. It's Marcus. He showed her the text. They found something. He needs to talk to me. Go. Lena gestured to the door. I'll be fine here with her. Victor hesitated, clearly torn between staying and getting information that could keep them safe. Lena made the decision for him. Go, she repeated. Find out what they know. Just don't be long. He nodded, pressing a kiss to her forehead and then one to Sophia's before heading for the door. Lock it behind me. Don't open it for anyone but me or the nurses. The second he was gone, the room felt emptier. Lena got up carefully, everything still hurt, and locked the door as instructed. Then she returned to the bassinet where Sophia was starting to stir. Hi, baby girl, she whispered, lifting her daughter carefully. Just you and me for a bit. Sophia's eyes opened, unfocused and searching, and Lena felt that overwhelming love surge through her again. How was it possible to feel this much for someone she'd just met? To know, bone deep and certain, that she would die for this tiny person without hesitation. She settled into the rocking chair by the window, cradling Sophia close, and let herself imagine a different future. One where Victor really did get out. Where they found a house in the suburbs with a yard for Sophia to play in. Where the biggest threat was skinned knees and broken hearts, not bullets and kidnapping. It was a beautiful dream. She just had no idea if it was possible. Victor returned 20 minutes later, his expression grim. He checked the room thoroughly before speaking, his movements quick and efficient. They found Carson's last known address, he said quietly. Marcus is taking a team there now. Lena's heart stuttered. Do you think he's there? No, guy like that, he's too smart to stay in one place, but there might be evidence. Something that tells us who hired him or where he's planning to strike next. And if they find him? Victor's eyes went cold. Then the threat ends. Permanently. She should protest, should say something about justice and the legal system and doing things the right way. But with Sophia in her arms, warm and trusting and utterly dependent on them for protection, Lena found she didn't have it in her. Be careful, she said instead. All of you. Always. He crossed to her, dropping a kiss on top of her head before crouching down to eye level with Sophia. Hey, princess, Daddy's got to make sure the world is safe for you. I'll be back before you know it. Sophia, of course, had no idea what he was saying. She just yawned, her tiny mouth opening impossibly wide, and both her parents smiled despite everything. She's going to have you wrapped around her finger, Lena observed. She already does. Victor stood, his expression softening for just a moment before the hardness returned. I'll text you updates. Stay locked in here and don't let anyone in you don't recognize. I won't. Just... She caught his hand. Come back to us. Always. He promised again. And then he was gone, and Lena was alone with their daughter, and the terrible weight of hope and fear tangled together in her chest. The hours crawled by with agonizing slowness. Lena tried to focus on Sophia, on feeding her, changing her, learning the rhythms of this tiny person who'd upended her entire world. But her phone sat on the bedside table like a loaded gun, silent and ominous, and every minute without a text from Victor felt like an eternity. She was attempting to burp Sophia when her phone finally buzzed. Found evidence at the apartment, photos of targets, including you. He's been planning this for months. Still no sign of Carson, but we're getting closer. V. Photos of her. The thought made Lena's skin crawl. This man had been watching her, tracking her movements, planning when and how to take her. If Victor hadn't found her at the clinic that day, if she'd been even a week further along. She pushed the thought away and pulled Sophia closer, breathing in that sweet newborn smell that somehow made everything both better and worse. Another text came through an hour later. Found a burner phone, working on tracing the calls. Marcus thinks we'll have a location by tonight. Tonight. The word felt both too soon and not soon enough. Lena wanted this over, wanted the threat eliminated so she could breathe again. But she also knew what Victor finding Carson meant, knew what would happen when they came face to face. She tried not to think about it. The afternoon shift nurse came by to check on them, a kind woman in her 50s who admired Sophia and assured Lena she was doing everything right. It was a comfort she desperately needed, this reassurance that she wasn't completely failing at motherhood in her first 24 hours. You're a natural, the nurse said, watching Lena settle Sophia back in the bassinet. And that husband of yours, he's devoted. Doesn't see that kind of dedication much anymore. Lena didn't correct her about the husband part. It was easier to let people assume than to explain the complicated truth. He's protective, she said instead. That's good. You both need rest and support right now. New babies are wonderful, but they're exhausting. The nurse smiled. Get some sleep while she's sleeping. That's the best advice I can give you. Sleep sounded impossible, but Lena tried anyway. She managed maybe 20 minutes before another text jolted her awake. We have him. Carson's holed up in a warehouse on the east side. I'm going in with Marcus. Don't worry, this ends tonight. V. Lena's heart stopped. He was going after Carson. Right now, and there was nothing she could do but wait and pray he came back in one piece. She texted back with shaking hands. Be careful, please. The response came immediately. Always. I love you. The words hit her like a physical blow. I love you. 3 words Victor had said 1,000 times when they were married, but never since the divorce. Never since she'd walked away, and now he was saying them as he walked into danger, as if he might not get another chance. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard, 1,000 responses fighting for space. But what could she say? That she loved him too? That she was terrified? That she needed him to come back because she couldn't do this alone? In the end, she typed the only thing that mattered. Come back to us. Then she waited, and waited, and waited. Sophia woke hungry around 7, and Lena fed her on autopilot, her mind thousands of miles away in a warehouse where Victor was confronting a man who'd killed for money and hunted pregnant women like prey. She tried to picture how it would go, but her imagination kept showing her worst-case scenarios. Victor injured, Victor killed, Victor becoming the monster she'd always feared he could be. 8 o'clock came and went with no word. 9 o'clock, nothing. By 10, Lena was pacing the small room with Sophia against her shoulder, her body screaming in protest at the movement, but unable to stay still. The nurses had stopped by twice, concerned about her blood pressure, but she couldn't explain that her almost ex-husband was currently hunting a killer and she wouldn't be fine until she knew he was alive. At 10:30, her phone rang. She nearly dropped it in her haste to answer. Victor? It's Marcus up. The big man's voice was grave. We got him. Relief and terror warred in Lena's chest. Is Victor? He's fine. Bit banged up, but fine. Carson put up a fight, but the boss handled it. Handled it. That careful euphemism that could mean anything from subdued to executed. Lena closed her eyes, one hand instinctively tightening around Sophia. Is Carson alive? She asked, not sure what answer she wanted. No, ma'am. Marcus's voice was flat, professional. He pulled a weapon. It was self-defense. Self-defense. Maybe it was true. Maybe it wasn't. Lena found she didn't have the energy to parse the difference anymore. When is Victor coming back? Soon. He wanted me to call first, let you know he's okay. He's dealing with cleanup and then he'll be there. Cleanup. Another euphemism. Another piece of Victor's world that Lena had agreed not to ask about. Thank you, Marcus. Yes, ma'am. And ma'am? Congratulations on the baby. The boss, he's real happy. Happier than I've seen him in years. The call ended and Lena sank into the rocking chair with Sophia still in her arms. It was over. Carson was dead. The immediate threat eliminated. They were safe. So why did she feel like she was standing on the edge of a cliff? Victor arrived just after 11, slipping into the room like a shadow. He looked exactly like Marcus had described. Fine, but banged up. There was a cut above his left eyebrow, bruising starting to show along his jaw, and his knuckles were raw and bloody. But he was alive and whole and here. Lena stood, still cradling Sophia, and just looked at him. All the fear and anger and relief of the past hours crashed through her at once, leaving her trembling and speechless. I'm okay, Victor said quietly, reading her expression. It's over, Lena. He's gone. He can't hurt anyone anymore. Did you have to kill him? The question came out before she could stop it. Victor's jaw tightened. He had a gun pointed at Marcus's head. So yes, I had to kill him. And I'd do it again. She should feel something. Horror, disgust, moral outrage. But standing there with their daughter in her arms and Victor alive in front of her, all she felt was tired. Did you find out who hired him? She asked instead. Yeah. Victor moved closer, his eyes drawn to Sophia like a magnet. Edward Marchetti. He runs a black market adoption ring, specializing in children from powerful families. Babies he can sell for $500,000 each to people who don't ask questions. Lena's stomach turned. That's what he wanted. To steal our baby and sell her. That's what he wanted. Victor's voice went cold. But he's never going to get the chance. Marchetti's already in custody. Federal custody. Marcus made some calls. By morning, he'll be facing enough charges to put him away for life. And the other babies? The ones Carson already took? We found records in his apartment. Locations, buyers, everything. FBI's already moving on it. Victor's expression softened slightly. They'll get them back, Lena. All of them. It was more than she'd hoped for. Justice and rescue and an actual end to the nightmare. Lena felt tears prick her eyes, hot and overwhelming. Can I hold her? Victor asked quietly. I just need to see that she's really okay. Lena handed Sophia over without hesitation, watching as Victor cradled their daughter against his chest with infinite care. His eyes closed, his whole body sagging with relief, and she saw his lips move in what might have been a prayer or a promise, or both. She's perfect, he whispered. She's safe and perfect, and she's ours. We need to talk, Lena said softly, about what happens next. Victor opened his eyes, meeting her gaze over Sophia's head. I know. You killed a man tonight. I did. And you'd do it again. Without hesitation. No apology, no justification, just brutal honesty. That's who I am, Lena. I can't change that. But I can choose who I am for her, for you. What does that mean? He looked down at Sophia, his expression raw. It means I'm out. I told Marcus tonight. I'm stepping back from the organization, retiring. Whatever you want to call it. I'm done. Lena's heart stuttered. Victor, you can't just... I can, and I am. His voice was steel wrapped in velvet. I've spent the last 8 months building exit strategies, moving assets, setting up contingencies. I've got enough legitimate businesses to keep us comfortable for 3 lifetimes, and I've got enough leverage to make sure no one comes after me for leaving. Leverage. She didn't want to know what that meant. So you're just walking away? They're letting you go. They don't have a choice. Victor's eyes met hers, hard and certain. I've made it very clear what happens if anyone tries to stop me. The organization will survive without me. It'll even thrive. I'm handing control to people I trust, but I'm done living that life. I'm done choosing power over everything else. What about the danger, the enemies you've made? Will be handled. I'm not naive enough to think I can just disappear, but I can minimize the threat, can build enough walls between my past and our future that she grows up safe. He looked down at Sophia, his voice softening. I can give her the childhood I never had, the one you deserved, a life where she doesn't have to be afraid. Lena wanted to believe him, wanted to trust that walking away was possible, that they could really build something different. But she'd seen too much, knew too well how Victor's world worked. And if it's not enough, she asked, if the walls aren't high enough or the enemies come anyway, then I'll deal with them. Simple. Final. But they won't get to you. They won't get to her, I'll make sure of it. He said it with such absolute certainty that Lena almost believed him, almost let herself hope that love and determination could overcome a lifetime of violence and bad choices. I need time, she said finally, to figure out what I want, what's best for Sophia. Take all the time you need. Victor handed Sophia back to her carefully. I'm not going anywhere. Whether we're together or not, whether you forgive me or not, I'm going to be the father she deserves. I'm going to prove every day that I can be different. What if different isn't enough? Then I'll try harder. He cupped her face with one hand, his thumb brushing away a tear she hadn't realized had fallen. I love you, Lena. I never stopped. And I know I don't deserve another chance. I know I've given you every reason to walk away and never look back. But I'm asking anyway. Let me prove I can be the man you need, the partner you deserve. The words should have scared her, should have sent her running in the opposite direction. But standing there with their daughter between them and Victor's hand gentle against her cheek, Lena felt something shift in her chest. Maybe it was exhaustion, maybe it was hormones, or maybe it was just the simple truth that despite everything, despite the violence and the fear and all the ways they'd broken each other, she still loved him too. "Okay," she whispered. Victor's eyes widened. "Okay? Okay, you can prove it." She took a shaky breath. "But there are rules, boundaries, things that have to change if this is going to work. Anything, name it. No more secrets. If something threatens us, I need to know. Full transparency. Done. And you really get out. Not halfway, not on paper while you're still pulling strings. Actually out. I swear it." His hand moved to rest over his heart. "I'm out, Lena. For real. For good. And we do this slow. We don't just jump back into marriage like nothing happened. We date. We figure out if we can actually make this work, and we put Sophia first in every decision." "Agreed." A small smile tugged at his lips. "Anything else?" "Therapy." She said it firmly. "Both of us, together and separate. We need help navigating this, and I can't do it alone." Victor hesitated for just a second, then nodded. "Okay. Therapy. I'll make the appointments." "Really?" She'd expected more resistance. "Really?" His expression was serious. "I told you, Lena. I'll do whatever it takes. If that means sitting in a room and talking about my feelings, then that's what I'll do. For you. For her." Sophia chose that moment to start fussing, her tiny face scrunching up in preparation for a full-blown cry. Lena shifted her automatically, rocking and soothing, and Victor's hand came to rest on her lower back in a gesture of support so natural it took her breath away. "She's probably hungry again," Lena said. "Want me to step out?" She thought about it, then shook her head. "No, stay. You should learn this too. How to help." The look Victor gave her was worth everything. Pure gratitude and hope, and something that looked dangerously like love. He settled beside her on the bed as she began the awkward process of getting Sophia to latch, and when the baby finally started eating, his arm came around Lena's shoulders. "Thank you," he murmured. "For what?" "For giving me a chance. For letting me be here. For—" His voice caught. "For her. For both of you. For everything." Lena leaned into him, exhaustion and relief making her bones heavy. "Don't make me regret it. I won't. I swear on everything I have, I won't." They sat like that as Sophia ate, Victor's arm around Lena and their daughter between them. And for the first time in 8 months, Lena let herself believe things might actually be okay. The next day, they were discharged from the hospital with a mountain of instructions and a car seat that Victor had somehow procured overnight. The drive back to the safe house was tense. Victor's eyes constantly checking the mirrors, but they made it without incident. The house looked different now. The nursery Victor had promised had materialized, a complete room with a crib and changing table and more baby supplies than one infant could ever need. It was excessive and thoughtful, and so completely Victor that Lena didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "When did you have time to do all this?" she asked, staring at the fully stocked room. "Had it delivered while we were at the hospital. Marcus supervised the setup." Victor set the car seat down carefully, his eyes on Sophia's sleeping face. "I wanted her to have everything ready. It's perfect." And it was. Soft yellows and whites, pictures of animals on the walls, a rocking chair by the window that looked suspiciously comfortable. "Thank you." "You don't have to thank me. She's my daughter. This is what fathers do." Over the next few weeks, they fell into a rhythm. Victor stayed at the safe house, sleeping in the guest room but always available when Sophia needed him. He learned to change diapers and swaddle and hold her just right to soothe her crying. He took night shifts without complaint, walking the floors with their daughter when she was fussy, singing to her in a voice Lena had forgotten could be gentle. And slowly, carefully, they learned to be around each other again. It wasn't easy. There were arguments and hard conversations and moments when Lena wanted to run. But they kept showing up, kept trying. And day by day, something started to rebuild between them. Victor made good on his promises. Within a month, he'd officially stepped down from the organization, handing control to his second-in-command with a formal ceremony that Lena didn't attend but heard about from Marcus. He started therapy, both individual sessions and couples counseling with Lena, and to her surprise, he actually engaged with it. The threats that Lena had feared never materialized. Victor's exit had been planned too carefully, his leverage too complete. The organization let him go because trying to stop him would have cost more than it was worth. 3 months after Sophia's birth, Victor took Lena to dinner. Just the two of them, with Marcus babysitting and strict instructions to call if anything seemed wrong. It was their first real date since before the divorce, and Lena was terrified. They went to a small Italian place Victor had found, quiet and intimate, the kind of restaurant where you could actually have a conversation. He ordered wine, even though Lena couldn't drink while breastfeeding, and they talked about everything and nothing: Sophia's latest milestones, Victor's new legitimate business ventures, the house they'd started looking at in a good school district, normal things, safe things. "I've been thinking," Victor said over dessert, his expression serious. "About us. About what happens next." Lena's heart stuttered. "Okay. I know we agreed to take things slow, and I'm not trying to rush you, but I need you to know." He reached across the table, taking her hand. "I want this. All of it. I want to marry you again, want to build a real life together, want to give Sophia the family she deserves, but only if that's what you want too." "Victor, let me finish." His thumb traced circles on her palm. "I know I don't deserve it. I know I screwed up so badly the first time that you had every right to never look back. But I'm not that man anymore. Or I'm trying not to be. And if you'll let me, I want to spend the rest of my life proving it to you." Lena looked at him, really looked at him. At the man who'd killed for her, who'd walked away from everything for her, who woke up 3 times a night to rock their daughter back to sleep. The man who'd been going to therapy twice a week and actually doing the work, who'd kept every promise he'd made, even when it was hard. "I'm scared," she admitted. "I'm scared of trusting you again and getting hurt. I'm scared of building something just to watch it fall apart. I'm scared too." His voice was raw. "I'm terrified I'll mess this up, that I'll fall back into old patterns, that I won't be enough. But I'm willing to risk it. For you. For her. For the family we could be." She wanted to say yes, wanted to leap into his arms and believe that love could fix everything. But she'd learned the hard way that love wasn't enough. It took work and trust and constant choice. "Ask me again in 6 months," she said, finally. "If we're still doing the work, if we're still choosing each other every day, ask me again then." Victor nodded slowly. 6 months. I can do that. And Victor, when you do ask," she squeezed his hand, "the answer will probably be yes." The smile that broke across his face was worth everything. Pure joy and relief and hope all tangled together. He raised her hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to her knuckles. "I'll hold you to that." They did the work. God, did they do the work. Therapy sessions where they excavated old wounds and learned new ways of communicating, difficult conversations about boundaries and expectations, and how to build a partnership instead of a power dynamic. Fights that they actually worked through instead of letting fester. And through it all, Sophia grew. She learned to smile, to laugh, to reach for her parents with chubby hands that made them both melt. She was fierce and stubborn and absolutely fearless, Victor's daughter through and through, with Lena's eyes and a personality all her own. 6 months came faster than Lena expected. She and Victor had moved into the house they'd found. A beautiful colonial in a quiet neighborhood with good schools and a yard big enough for a swing set. They'd set up separate bedrooms at first, maintaining the boundaries they'd agreed on. But boundaries had a way of softening. Victor would fall asleep in Lena's room after putting Sophia down. Lena would find herself seeking him out at night when the baby was particularly fussy. Slowly, naturally, they'd gravitated back together. On the day that marked exactly 6 months since their dinner, Victor took Lena to the park where they'd had their first date over 4 years ago. Sophia was with them this time, strapped to Victor's chest in a carrier and gurgling happily at the world. "I have something to ask you," Victor said when they reached the bench where he'd first kissed her. "I know," Lena smiled. "You're very predictable." "Am I?" He grinned, then shifted Sophia slightly and dropped to one knee. "Lean across. You've given me more chances than I deserved. You've let me back into your life, let me be a father to our daughter, let me prove that I could change. And I know I'm still a work in progress. I know I'll probably mess up again, but I also know that I love you more than I thought it was possible to love anyone, and I want to spend the rest of my life showing you just how much." He pulled out a ring, not the ostentatious diamond from their first marriage, but a simple band with a single stone that caught the light perfectly. "Will you marry me? Again? Will you let me be your partner and Sophia's father and the man who gets to wake up next to you for the rest of our lives?" Lena looked at him, at this impossible man who'd torn her heart apart and somehow stitched it back together, at the father who'd learned to be gentle, the warrior who'd chosen peace, the monster who'd become human again. "Yes," she said, tears streaming down her face. "Yes, I'll marry you." Victor stood, careful not to jostle Sophia, and kissed her like he was sealing a promise, like he was making a vow he'd spend his life keeping. And maybe, just maybe, he would. They got married 3 months later in a small ceremony at the house, with just Marcus and a handful of close friends. Sophia was there, dressed in a tiny white dress and completely stealing the show. Victor cried during his vows, promising to love and protect and choose them every single day. Lena promised the same, adding that she'd hold him accountable and love him anyway when he fell short. It wasn't perfect. They still fought sometimes, still struggled with old wounds and new challenges, but they kept showing up, kept doing the work, kept choosing each other and their daughter over everything else. Victor built a legitimate empire, real estate and investments and businesses that didn't require violence to maintain. He was ruthlessly successful at it, channeling all that intensity and drive into something that wouldn't get him killed. He made more money than they could spend in 10 lifetimes, and he used it to give Sophia everything she could want. But more importantly, he gave her himself. He coached her soccer team and helped with homework and showed up to every school play and recital. He taught her to be strong and fierce and unafraid, but also kind and compassionate and fair. He broke the cycle of violence and fear that had defined his own childhood, creating something better for his daughter. Lena went back to school, getting a degree in social work, and eventually opening a nonprofit that helped women escape dangerous situations. She used her experience and Victor's resources to make a real difference, to give other women the second chance she'd gotten. And Sophia, fierce, brilliant, unstoppable Sophia, grew up knowing she was loved beyond measure. She knew her parents' story, knew they'd fought for each other and for her, knew that family was something you built through choice and effort and unwavering commitment. On her 5th birthday, sitting between her parents at her party, Sophia looked up at them with those serious eyes and asked, "You guys are never getting divorced again, right?" Victor and Lena exchanged a glance, a whole conversation passing between them in that look. "Never again," Victor promised, pulling his daughter onto his lap. "Your mom and we're forever now." "Good," Sophia nodded decisively. "Because I like having both of you." "We like having you too, baby girl." Lena pressed a kiss to her daughter's head. More than anything in the world. And it was true. This life they'd built, messy and imperfect and fought for every single day, was more than either of them had dreamed possible. It was family. It was home. It was proof that people could change, that love could heal, that second chances were real if you were brave enough to take them. The monster had become a father. The victim had become a survivor. And together, they'd created something beautiful from the ashes of everything they'd destroyed. It wasn't the ending Lena had imagined all those months ago, sitting alone in a clinic and trying to hide from her past. But it was better. It was real. And it was theirs. And sometimes that was enough. Sometimes it was everything.